So right now is the time to make a decision. You can follow along with what I'm doing, or you can do something completely different. So what I'm going to do here is something slightly different from what I've done before. I'm going to do this action coming up like this, and then I'm going to come down here, but then I'm going to make this part here shallow and smaller. So my overall path of action will go from this point here up to this key point up here, then it's going to come down and just a little bit of a dip here. So this action going up is going to be my big part. So therefore, I'm going to put my shoulder up here, keep my clavicle in the exact same position right here. And so now, when I flip this, there's my action. Okay. So then I need another drawing that's going to show the low position down here before I get back to this position here. So coming up into this one, I want my ball to be back over here and coming up here. So now if I put these drawings in sequence, I'm going to go from 1 to my high point here, then down to my low point here, and then I'm going to come back up to this position here. So now when I take the drawings and put them in my fingers to roll them, I can see that action. It's got a little boink, 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 boink. So it just makes for a different path of action in there, which is a little bit more eccentric. So again, if you want to just do your loop, put the low point down at the bottom, go ahead and do that. I'm okay with that. All right? Again, the parameter of this assignment is to simply get it to loop so that it's a nice smooth action overall, going from one point to the other with 16 drawings. Okay? I don't care how you do it, just so long as it loops nicely and it's smooth and we don't get anything that flicks off of the path of action. So we can't have things jerking around. Right? So having done these drawings now, I have to determine what is the spacing on this going to be. Like, how am I going to slow in and slow out of this? So I have to determine what my drawing numbers are going to be. So going from this position to here, to this position here, down to this position here, I have to figure out how many drawings I'm going to put in here. So what I really want to do is I want to have this part here from here to here go slower and this part here go faster. So in my overall timing chart here, I can choose whatever number I want these drawings to be. So let's say I choose this drawing here at the low point to be my number 7 drawing. It means I'm going to have one in between coming back up again. So I make this one number 7. So going from 7 to 9, I'm going to have a halfway position in there. And then this one, I want to have from this position to my high point here. Okay, maybe I want to have the same number of drawings, just one in between there. So I'm going to make this one number 3, going up to the high point. And then in between that, I now have my other drawings that are going to take me to number 7. So 3 to 7, I'm going to have a halfway, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm just going to even these all out. So it's going to be 4, 5, 6. Right? So all I've done is I've taken my total number of drawings here and I've just chosen whether or not I'm going to slow in or slow out or go evenly spaced on these. Okay? So now what I have to do is I have to go back and start to drop in my in-between. So between 1 and 3, I've got a halfway position, which is number 2. So I just find my halfway position on that path of action, find my center clavicle point, find the halfway position on the path of action, find my clavicle in, and each time I draw a line, I want to flip it to see whether or not it's moving the way I want it to move. Okay? So you don't just go in and do the entire drawing and then go back and double check to see if it's working. Every time you draw a line or a segment or a portion of it, you go back and you check. So in this case here, we basically just got 2 lines. 1 line, 2. Okay? So we can see that that action there is moving smoothly. So now I can go from number 3 into my number 7 position. And I have to do my halfway position number 5 first. And again, just so you know, there are variables to this that you can change at any given point in time. I mean, just because I wrote this out does not mean that I have to stick with it. What I could do is I could alter this if I wanted to. I could make this part here go slower at the beginning and then faster at the end by taking my number 6 and making that my halfway point. So it's 6, 5, and 4. Right? And I could even do this after the fact. Like once I do my initial drawings of my shoulder, I could go back, pencil test it, see whether or not that part is working properly, and then if I don't like the timing on one section of it, I can go back in and alter it and change it around. Right? So you're never ever locked in to having your animation finalized until you say, I'm happy with this. This is the way I want it. So I think that's what I'll do. I'll just change this now so that my halfway drawing is actually number 6. Okay, so halfway between these 2 points here. And you'll notice that the length of this line here and the length of this line here, it's getting shorter, which means that it's coming towards us. So we're doing a foreshortening thing where it's going like this. It's out here and then it's coming like this, so the length of it gets shorter. Right? So again, my path of action going between those 2 lines is sweeping down like this. So by changing my timing on this, by making it slow into this point here, so from this point here, it's going to go slower and then faster at the bottom and then pop up. So it's going to go down hard and then come up and push it into the final position. So that's the effect that I basically want to have there. So now I've got a cushion between my 3 and my number 6. So I keep my number 6 down with 3, and my next in between is going to be number 5. Again, finding my halfway position here. And then my final in between is number 4. Now, one of the questions that often comes up here at this point in time in your careers, if you want to call it that, is that, as I mentioned before in the introduction, everything that we've been doing to this point, I've been saying, do this, do this, do this, follow along with me, and it'll turn out right if you just copy what I'm doing. The question always comes up is, how do you know? There are 2 ways of knowing something. One is you try it and you see if it works. Okay, that's just sort of like a guessing and hoping type of thing, right? So you just sort of throw it out and see what happens, and if it works, great, it's trial and error. If it doesn't work, scrap it and try something else. The second way is through simple analysis. Okay, you think it through in your head. You have to see the images in your mind ahead of time to know exactly what's happening from one point to another. So that's preordaining what's going to happen by planning it. And that's through mental visualization. You see it in your head, you play it over and over, and you get a sense of what it is that you want, whatever it is that you're animating, to do. And then you sit down and you draw it. The third way is a combination of that. It's not only just mentally visualizing it, but it's also acting it out. You have to sit down and actually physically act it. So as I mentioned before, you've got an arm, use it. Start moving your arm around. Decide what you feel you want your arm to be doing, and see if you can make your arm do it comfortably. And then you replicate that over and over and over again until you sort of memorize it. And it's just like being an actor. If you're an actor, you're not going to get a script the day before the play goes on, and they say, read this over and then appear on stage tomorrow in our play. It doesn't work that way. Okay, you can memorize it. Let's say you've got that type of a memory where you can memorize something instantaneously, and then you can step out on stage and you can say the lines, but that doesn't mean that you're going to act it properly with the proper emotion. You're simply stating what was in the script. And so you actually have to sit down and act it out. And that's what rehearsals are for. Rehearsals are all about figuring out what works, what doesn't work, figuring out your timing, seeing if this works or that works, or how you're interacting with your other characters. So that's what pre-planning your animation is all about as well, is that you sit down and you act it out. And you try it over and over and over again several times until you get it right. And then you sit down and you draw it. So you've got it mentally recorded in your brain, you've acted it out, you performed it, then you sit down, and all you're basically doing at that point is you're just tracing off your memory. Okay. So remember, did we do the thing with the mental visualization where we look at the lights? Okay, remember that? Where we burnt our retinas and you still see that light in your eyes? That's the idea here, is that we're seeing the image in our mind and basically just copying it out. Now the fourth way is something that I was speaking to the second year students about last week, and I posted that lecture online, is by doing film analysis. It's where you actually start to watch films, not just from an entertainment point of view, but you look at them critically and begin to analyze what it is that's going on in that specific film, and why the animator that animated that scene, why did they do what they did? And you start to think, could I incorporate this somehow into my animation as well? So you learn from previous people's experience and what they did. So that's something that's very valuable, and I want you to take a peek at that video when you get a chance to understand what's going on. So now my path of action here, like I said before, is going down like this and coming back up to here. Now we've got to go back into our opposite position here. So I'm going to loop my path of action here up and around this way, and then I'm going to bring it down and back up into this position here. So my path of action is going to go something like this. Right? So therefore, my in-between, I'm going to have two key in-betweens. It's going to be up here, at this position. And then I'm going to have one that's down here. In the back position before it comes back up again. So these are my breakdown keys. Or like I said before, my secondary keys. So once again, I have to determine where am I going to place these in the overall scheme of my timing chart here. So if I follow through with what I did before from my number 9 drawing, let's pull this off so we can see the proper numbers here. You remember before what I did on the previous one was I went to this drawing here on this point on the first part of the action. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. So this drawing will actually be drawing number 11. So from 9 to 11, I've got a halfway in between. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the 3 in-betweens and go to my next drawing. That was the key there. Or 11 was the key, and 1, 2, 3, and then 15 is the next drawing. So this is 15 here. So from 15 back to 1, I've got a halfway in between, 16 back into 1. And from this one here, I'm going to follow that same timing that I had previously, where I'm going to slow into it and then go faster at the back end. So I've got 12, 13, and 14 up into 15. Right? So I'm just replicating what I did on the one side into the opposite side. Not that you have to do that, but I figure since it's a symmetrical action, I might as well follow through with it. So halfway in between these 2 points here, is that right? No, 9, oh, sorry, I need 9 and 11. This will be my in-between number 10. Halfway between these two positions here, it's going up. And again, path of action wise, you sort of have to follow through with what you did on the previous one. I could choose to pull this path of action out here just a little bit, so it's not following a pure straight line. So it just sort of loops around. Again, this is just where you have to sort of flip your drawings and know where you're going from and to. Because don't forget, you're the one that's in charge of what's happening here. Okay? You control what your arm does, and this pencil by itself will not animate. I can't put my drawings down on the disc here and put my pencil down and say, okay, go to it, have fun. Okay, it's an inanimate object. It won't do anything by itself. I'm the one that has to control it. And it's my brain that decides what's going on. So I have to know in my head What is the action that's going to be taking place here? So, my timing again from here, I have to do my halfway position, which is number 14. So we're swooping from here down to here. Path of action is going in a slight little bit of an arc here. Now my 13. Now, I've mentioned this to you before on your previous assignments as we've been sitting in and looking at your pencil tests, that in some cases, when people are doing their in-betweens, they're choosing to deviate away from your path of action. You can never deviate out of your path of action. Once you've chosen a direction for something to move in and created a path of action, you cannot suddenly put your ball out here for one drawing. It'll make a jerk. So it'll start up around here. It should be going down like this, but for some reason, for one drawing, it pops out. You can't do that. Right? So once you make a decision, here's my path of action, you must stick with it. You cannot deviate out of it. And that's why I've been telling a lot of people, your ball is popping on the pendulum swing, or your tail is curling in the wrong direction, etc., etc. Those are all deviations out of your path of action. So stick with what you've chosen to do. This is number 12. Once again, this is going to be very tight in here because it's slowing into the action. So one more in between and then we're done with the clavicle. We can move on to the upper part of the arm. So 15 into 1. And I'm keeping these lines rigid. I'm not putting any bend in them. I mean, if you wanted to, you could, but it would look slightly weird if you started bending your clavicles and bones and stuff. So try and keep them as rigid as possible. We're going to get the action, the overlapping action, taking place from the joints, one joint into the next one. So now let's take a look at these drawings all in order. Let's see how the action works here. See how it's forming a really nice figure 8 there. So that's kind of neat. Alright, so from this now, we get to start to plan out what our arm is going to be doing.